The mining colony on Ashkor 7 was a place where hope went to die. Gray rocks stretched as far as the eye could see, and the air tasted like metal and despair. Taiyang had been here for 6 months, and every day felt like a lifetime. He swung his pickaxe into the rock wall, feeling the shock travel through his arms. The reptilian guards watched from above, their yellow eyes never blinking. They were Velcrons, members of an empire that had crushed a dozen worlds before turning their attention to human space. Taiyang had been a mercenary, fighting in border skirmishes that nobody back on Earth even knew about. One bad mission, one betrayal, and he ended up here. The prison held about 300 beings from different species. Most were broken within weeks. The Velcrons enjoyed breaking people. They said it proved their superiority. Taiyang had learned to keep his head down and his mouth shut. Survival was the only goal that mattered. The alarm sounded at midday, a harsh screech that made everyone stop working. New prisoners were arriving. Taiyang wiped sweat from his face and watched as the transport ship landed in the center courtyard. The guards formed lines, their weapons ready. New prisoners always tried to run or fight. It never worked. The ship's door opened, and a group of humans stumbled out, blinking in the harsh light. Taiyang's chest tightened. He hadn't seen another human since he arrived. The Velcrons usually kept species separated to prevent organizing. Something was different this time. Among the new prisoners was a young woman who stood out immediately. She wore clothes that were too clean, too fine for this place. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and despite the fear in her eyes, she held her chin high. The other prisoners looked beaten and scared, but she looked angry. "That's Princess Yuna," whispered Hyun, another human who worked nearby. He was an engineer who had been captured from a colony ship. "I saw her on broadcasts back home. She was part of the diplomatic team." Taeyang felt his stomach drop. A princess. Here. That meant the negotiations had failed badly. It also meant she was a hostage, a valuable one. The Velcrons would use her to force Earth's government to surrender. The guards separated the prisoners, but they kept Princess Yuna in the center of the courtyard. Commander Vrax, the head warden, approached her. He was massive even for a Velcran, with scars covering his scales and a cruel smile that showed too many teeth. "Welcome, Princess," Vrax said in rough human language. "You will learn your place here. Royalty means nothing. You are just meat and bone like the rest." Yuna stared at him without flinching. "I am a diplomatic envoy. Harming me violates the accord of neutral space. My government will respond." Vrax laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Your government will do nothing. They care more about their borders than one soft little princess." He grabbed her arm, his claws digging into her skin. "You will work like everyone else. You will bleed like everyone else." Taeyang saw red marks appear on her arm where Vrax held her. Something in his chest twisted. He had survived 6 months by staying invisible, by not drawing attention. But watching this made him remember why he had become a soldier in the first place. Some things were worth fighting for. The guards took Yuna to the women's section of the prison, and work resumed. Taeyang couldn't focus. He kept thinking about the look in her eyes, that mixture of fear and defiance. The Velcrans would try to break that spirit. They always did. 3 days passed. Taeyang saw Yuna in the meal lines and during work assignments. The guards gave her the hardest jobs, the ones that would hurt and humiliate. She carried rocks that were too heavy, worked in the toxic fumes of the deep mines, and received smaller food rations than everyone else. But she never complained. She never cried where the guards could see. On the 4th day, everything changed. Taeyang was in the courtyard when he heard shouting. A crowd of prisoners had gathered in a circle, and guards were laughing. He pushed through the crowd and saw Yuna in the center. Her clothes were torn, and dirt covered her face. Commander Vrax stood over her with an electromagnetic whip, the kind that could fry nerve endings. Kneel and apologize, Vrax demanded. You spoke back to a guard. You must learn respect. Una was on her hands and knees, breathing hard. I only asked for water. We've been working for 12 hours without any. The whip cracked, and Una screamed as electricity coursed through her body. She collapsed onto the ground, shaking. The guards laughed louder. Other prisoners looked away. Nobody helped. Helping meant joining her on the ground. Vrax raised the whip again. Beg, princess. Let's hear royalty beg. Taeyang moved before his brain could stop him. He stepped into the circle and placed himself between Una and the whip. She's had enough. The courtyard went silent. Every eye turned to him. Commander Vrax tilted his head, studying Taeyang like an interesting insect. What did you say, human? Taeyang's heart hammered in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. I said she's had enough. You made your point. Vrax moved closer, towering over Taeyang. And what will you do about it? Nothing. I just thought someone should ask. Taeyang glanced down at Una, who stared up at him with wide eyes. She's valuable, right? A hostage? Damaging her too much reduces her worth. For a moment, Taeyang thought Vrax might actually consider the logic. Then the commander smiled that terrible smile. You want to take her punishment? Very well. 50 strikes. If you stay standing, she goes free to her cell. If you fall, you both get 100. Taeyang nodded. Deal. He didn't have time to prepare. The first strike from the whip felt like being torn apart from the inside. Lightning exploded through his back, and his muscles seized. He fell to one knee, gasping. The guards cheered. Get up, he told himself. She's watching. Everyone's watching. Get up. He forced himself to stand. His legs shook, but he stood. The second strike hit harder. The third made his vision go white. By the 10th, he tasted blood. By the 20th, he couldn't feel his fingers. But he stayed standing. He bit his tongue until it bled, focused on the pain he could control to ignore the pain he couldn't. His body screamed at him to fall, to give up, to make it stop. But he thought about Una behind him. He thought about every human in this prison watching to see if one of their own would break. He thought about the guards who believed humans were weak. Strike after strike landed. The world narrowed to pain and breathing. Nothing else existed. His back was raw meat. His nerves were on fire, but his legs didn't give out. When the 50th strike landed, Taeyang was still standing. Barely, swaying, but standing. Commander Vrax stared at him with something that might have been respect or might have been anger. Interesting. Take them both to the medical bay. I want them healed enough to work tomorrow. Guards dragged Taeyang away. His legs finally gave out. The last thing he heard before passing out was Yuna's voice, quiet but clear. Thank you. In the medical bay, which was little more than a room with bandages and pain suppressors, Una sat beside Taeyang's cot. She had cleaned the dirt from her face, and someone had given her new clothes. Her hands shook as she held a wet cloth, dabbing at his wounds. Why did you do that? She asked. You don't even know me. Taeyang's voice came out rough. Someone had to. You could have died, but I didn't. He managed a weak smile. We're tougher than we look. Una studied his face for a long moment. What's your name? Taeyang. I'm Una, but you already knew that. She finished cleaning a wound on his shoulder. I won't forget this, Taeyang. When I get out of here, when I get back to Earth, I'll make sure you're remembered. Let's focus on staying alive first, Taeyang said. Promises about the future don't mean much in a place like this. But as he closed his eyes to rest, he felt something he hadn't felt in 6 months. Purpose. Someone needed protecting, and he was still alive to do it. That was enough. Outside the medical bay, in the shadows of the corridor, a guard activated a recording device. Every moment of the punishment had been captured. The footage would be sent to the homeworld, to the palace, to Queen Velrys herself. And the queen, sitting on her throne of obsidian and bone, would watch a human endure 50 strikes of an electromagnetic whip without falling. She would watch it again and again, her eyes narrowing with fascination. The game had begun, though the players didn't know it yet, and Queen Velrys never lost the things that interested her. 3 weeks had passed since Taeyang took the whipping for Princess Yuna. His back was covered in scars that would never fully fade, but he was alive and working again. The Velcran guards watched him differently now, some with suspicion, others with something that looked almost like curiosity. The prison population had changed, too. Word spread about what happened in the courtyard. Humans who had kept their heads down now nodded to Taeyang when he passed. Other species gave him a wider berth, unsure what to make of a human who could endure punishment meant to kill. Yuna found ways to be near him during work shifts and meal times. The guards allowed it, probably because they wanted to see if he would protect her again. She was different from what he expected. Smart, observant, and stronger than her refined appearance suggested. "You're healing faster than you should," she said one morning as they carried rocks from the mine entrance. "The medical officer told me you should still be in bed." Taeyang shrugged, feeling the pull of scar tissue across his shoulders. "Humans are good at healing. It's one of our better traits." "The Velcrans think we're fragile," Yuna said quietly. "They study us like we're made of glass, but you're showing them something different." "I'm just trying to survive." "No." She stopped walking and looked at him directly. "You're doing more than that. You're giving people hope. The other humans in here, they watch you. They see that we don't have to break." Before Taeyang could respond, alarms blared across the prison. Guards rushed toward the eastern wall where a section of the mining tunnel had collapsed. Prisoners were trapped inside. Commander Vrax's voice boomed over the speakers, calling for emergency crews. Taeyang joined the rescue team, along with Hyun and a dozen other prisoners. The tunnel entrance was blocked by tons of rock. Dust filled the air, making it hard to breathe. Through the gaps in the rubble, they could hear voices crying for help. "We need cutting equipment," Hyun said, examining the collapse. "These rocks are too big to move by hand." A Velcran guard sneered at him. "Then they die. We're not wasting equipment on prisoners." Taeyang stepped forward. "There are 10 people trapped in there. 10 workers you need for the mines. Let us try." The guard considered this. "You have 1 hour. If you can't clear it, we seal the tunnel." It was an impossible task. The rocks were massive, and they had only basic tools. But Taeyang refused to give up. He organized the prisoners into teams, using leverage and coordination to shift the larger pieces. His hands bled, his muscles screamed, but he kept working. Yuna appeared beside him with a metal rod. "Where do you need me?" "You should stay back. This is dangerous." So was standing in front of that whip. She wedged the rod under a rock. "Where do I push?" Together they worked. Taeyang noticed that Yuna knew things he didn't about structural stability and weight distribution. Her diplomatic training included engineering basics, she explained. Knowledge the Velcrans had underestimated. 30 minutes passed. Then 45. They were running out of time. Taeyang's vision blurred from exhaustion, but he pushed harder. His body wanted to quit, but his mind wouldn't let it. With 5 minutes left, they broke through. 10 prisoners stumbled out of the collapsed tunnel, coughing but alive. The rescue team collapsed in exhaustion. Even the Velcran guards looked impressed. Commander Vrax arrived to inspect the rescue. He studied Taeyang with those cold yellow eyes. "You saved them. Why? They are nothing to you." "They're people," Taeyang said simply. "That's enough." Vrax made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Humans and their strange morality. You spend energy on the weak instead of culling them. Yet somehow, you persist." He leaned closer. The Queen has been watching footage of you. She finds you interesting. That is not a good thing, human. After Vrax left, Hyun pulled Taeyang aside. We need to talk. Privately. They found a quiet corner during the evening meal. Hyun looked nervous, constantly checking for guards. I've been working on something, a communication device. It's almost finished. Taeyang felt hope surge in his chest. You can contact Earth? Maybe, probably. The signal won't be strong, but it might reach a patrol ship if any are nearby. Hyun paused. But I need a specific component, a resonator crystal from the deep mines. It's in a restricted area, heavily guarded, the kind of place they send prisoners as punishment. So we need someone to get punished. No. We need someone who can survive getting punished and still have the strength to steal the crystal. Hyun met his eyes. We need you. Taeyang didn't hesitate. What do I have to do? Over the next week, Taeyang deliberately broke small rules, talking back to guards, missing work quotas, minor infractions that earned him punishment shifts in the deep mines. The air there was toxic, filled with gases that burned the lungs. Most prisoners lasted an hour before passing out. Yuna figured out what he was doing. You're taking risks again. For what? He couldn't tell her about the communication device. Not yet. Too dangerous if the guards found out. Just trying to map the prison, know the layout, could be useful. She didn't believe him, but she didn't push. Instead, she started teaching him things during their brief moments together. Diplomatic protocols, Velcran culture, political structures, information that might be valuable if they ever escaped. The Velcrans worship strength above everything, she explained. But their strength is physical. They don't understand our kind of strength, the endurance, the ability to keep going when everything says stop. You've learned a lot about them. I was supposed to negotiate a peace treaty before everything went wrong. Sadness crossed her face. I studied their history, their values. I thought understanding them would help. But some species don't want peace. They want conquest. On his fifth punishment shift in the deep mines, Taeyang found the resonator crystal. It was embedded in a wall, glowing faintly blue. He worked carefully, using broken tools to chip away the rock around it. The toxic air made his head spin and his lungs burn. Other prisoners had already collapsed around him, dragged out by guards. But Taeyang kept working. Minutes felt like hours. His hands were numb. His vision kept going dark, but he got the crystal free and tucked it into his boot. When the guards came to pull him out, he was barely conscious. They dragged him to the medical bay and threw him on a cot. The medical officer, a bored Velcran, checked his vital signs and muttered something about impossible human resilience. Yuna was there when he woke up. She pressed a wet cloth to his forehead, her face tight with worry and anger. You almost died. But I didn't. He managed a weak grin. Are you keeping count? Because I'm losing track. This isn't funny, Taeyang. Every time you do this, every time you push yourself like this, you're... She stopped, struggling with the words. You're important, to the other prisoners, to me. If you die, it matters. He wanted to tell her about the crystal, about the hope of contacting Earth, but guards were always listening. Instead, he squeezed her hand gently. I'm not planning to die. I've got too much to live for. That night, he passed the crystal to Hyun. 2 days later, Hyun completed the communication device. It was crude, built from scraps and stolen parts, but it worked. They sent out a distress signal on all Earth military frequencies, including their location and information about Velcron military strength. Whether anyone received it, they didn't know. But it was something. A chance. Meanwhile, on the Velcron homeworld, Queen Velrys watched another video of Taeyang. This time, footage of him surviving the toxic deep mines longer than any prisoner in recorded history. She watched him refuse to quit, even when his body should have shut down. "Fascinating," she murmured to her advisors. "Test him more. I want to know his limits." Commander Vrax received new orders. Increase the difficulty, increase the punishment, find the breaking point of the human called Tai Yang. But what the Queen didn't understand, what the Velcrons couldn't comprehend, was that humans didn't break the way other species did. They bent, they adapted, they endured. And Taiyang had made a promise to himself. He would protect Yuna. He would help his fellow prisoners. He would survive long enough to see freedom, no matter what the Velcrons threw at him. The burden of being a guardian was heavy, but some weights were worth carrying. Queen Velrys sat on her throne of black crystal and bone, watching the same footage for the 20th time. The human called Taiyang stood in the toxic mines, his body swaying with exhaustion, his skin pale from poison, yet his hands still moved, still worked, still refused to fall. "Explain this to me," she said to the scientist beside her throne. Dr. Krell, a nervous Velcran with graying scales, adjusted his datapad. "Your Majesty, by all biological markers, this human should be dead. The atmospheric toxicity alone should have stopped his respiratory system after 30 minutes. He lasted 3 hours. And the whipping? The cave-ins? The starvation tests? All the same, Majesty. He should break. He should die. But he doesn't." Krell pulled up charts and graphs. Human biology is not particularly impressive on paper. They lack natural armor, their strength is mediocre, and their size is unremarkable, yet this one displays resilience that exceeds our finest warriors. Velrys leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the frozen image of Taiyang. "I want him tested further. Send new orders to Commander Vrax. Increase the severity." "Majesty, with respect, if we kill this specimen, we lose the opportunity to study him." "Then don't kill him." Her voice was cold as space. "Find his limits. I want to understand what makes him function." Lord Caven, her chief advisor, stepped from the shadows. He was old for a Velcron, his scales dull with age, but his mind still sharp. "This obsession concerns me, Majesty. He is one prisoner among thousands, one human among billions. He is unique," Velrys countered. "Look at the other humans in that prison. They break like everyone else. But this one is different. If we can understand why, if we can replicate it, imagine what it means for our warriors." "You want to breed them," Caven said flatly. "I want to use them. Every resource, every advantage. That is how we built an empire." She stood, her tall frame casting shadows across the throne room. "Arrange a visit to the prison. I will see this human myself." Caven bowed, hiding his concern. The Queen had never visited a prison colony before. This was unprecedented. Back on Ashkor 7, Taiyang was feeling the effects of the new orders. The punishments came more frequently and more severely. Electric shocks that left him convulsing. Exposure to extreme cold that should have caused hypothermia. Work shifts that lasted 30 hours without rest. And every time he survived. Not easily. Not without pain. But he survived. Yuna watched with growing horror as the guards singled him out again and again. "They're targeting you specifically now. This isn't random punishment anymore." "I noticed," Taiyang said, his voice hoarse from screaming during the latest shock treatment. They sat in the meal hall, his hands shaking too badly to hold his spoon properly. "Someone's interested." "The Queen," Hyun whispered, joining them at the table. "I overheard guards talking. She's been watching footage of you. She's ordered increased testing." Taiyang felt ice in his stomach. Being noticed by the Queen of the Velcran Empire was not good news. "How long until she gets bored?" "She doesn't get bored," said a new voice. A woman slid into the seat beside them. Taiyang recognized her as Hana, a pilot who had arrived a month ago. I was stationed near Velcron space for 2 years. Queen Velrys doesn't let go of things that interest her. She collects them. Collects? Yuna asked. Rare artifacts, powerful weapons, unique specimens. Hana looked at Taeyang with pity. You've become a specimen to her. That's dangerous. More dangerous than staying in this prison? Much more. At least here, you're just a number. If she takes personal interest, you become property. And Queen Velrys never releases her property. The conversation was cut short by alarms. Guards rushed through the prison, barking orders. Prisoners were forced back to their cells and told to clean themselves. An inspection was coming, an important one. Commander Vrax appeared in the cell blocks, his manner more agitated than usual. The Queen herself visits tomorrow. This prison will be spotless. Any prisoner who causes problems will be executed immediately. Understood? The message was clear. Behave or die. That night, Taeyang couldn't sleep. He lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling, feeling the ache in every muscle. His body was a map of punishment, scars layered on scars. How much more could he take? You're thinking too loud, Yuna's voice came from the darkness. The women's cells were separated from the men's by a corridor, but sound traveled. I can hear your worry from here. Just wondering if tomorrow is the day my luck runs out. It's not luck, Taeyang. It's strength. Real strength. The kind they don't understand. Feels like stubbornness. Maybe that's what strength is, being too stubborn to quit. She paused. If the Queen takes you away, I'll find a way to get you back. I promise. Don't make promises you can't keep. I keep all my promises. Her voice was fierce despite the whisper. You protected me. I'll protect you. That's what humans do, right? He smiled in the darkness. Yeah, that's what we do. The next day, the prison transformed. Guards in ceremonial armor lined the walls. The courtyard was cleared of debris. Prisoners were arranged in neat rows, heads down, silent. Queen Velrys arrived on a ship that made the prison transport look like a toy. It was massive, black as night, with weapons that could level cities. She emerged surrounded by elite guards, her form tall and imposing even among Velcrans. Her scales were deep purple, unusual for her species, and her eyes were sharp as blades. She walked through the prison slowly, inspecting everything. Prisoners trembled as she passed. One alien, a Garvian traitor, looked up at her. A guard immediately struck him down. Velrys didn't even glance at the body. She stopped in front of the human section. Her eyes scanned the rows until they found Taeyang. For a long moment, she simply stared at him. He kept his head down but felt the weight of her gaze like physical pressure. You, she said in perfect human language. Look at me. Taeyang raised his head slowly. Their eyes met. Hers were gold, cold, and calculating. But behind the coldness, he saw something else. Curiosity, hunger, the look of someone who found a puzzle they needed to solve. You are the one who endures, she said. It wasn't a question. I'm a prisoner, Majesty. I do what I'm told. You do more than that. You protect others. You volunteer for punishment. You survive what should kill you. She moved closer, studying him like a scientist studies an insect. Why? Because someone has to. Explain. Taeyang chose his words carefully. In human culture, we have a saying. We're stronger together than alone. When one of us suffers, we all suffer. So we share the burden. Velrys tilted her head. Weakness. You waste energy on those who cannot help themselves. We call it strength. The strength to carry others when they can't carry themselves. Fascinating. She turned to Commander Vrax. I want him tested properly. Not these crude punishments. Real tests. Scientific measurements. Yes, Majesty. Velrys looked back at Taeyang. I have defeated warriors from 100 worlds. I have seen strength in all its forms. But you display something different, something I do not yet understand." She smiled, showing sharp teeth. "I will understand it, and then I will own it." She turned to leave, but stopped when Yuna stepped forward from the crowd. "Majesty, wait!" Every guard raised their weapon. Prisoners gasped. Nobody spoke to the queen without permission. Velrus looked at Yuna with mild interest. "And who are you to address me?" "Princess Yuna of Earth's diplomatic corps. I was taken hostage during peace negotiations." "Ah, the princess. I wondered if you were still alive." Velrus studied her. "You have something to say?" "Taiyang is under my protection. As a diplomatic prisoner, I have certain rights under the Neutral Space Accord. The accord is meaningless. Your government abandoned you." "They haven't. They won't." Yuna's voice was steady. "And if you harm him further, there will be consequences." Velrus laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Brave words from a prisoner. I respect bravery even when it's foolish." She gestured to her guards. "Let her stand beside him during the next test. Let's see if she maintains that courage." Before Yuna could be dragged away, Taeyang spoke. "She's right about the accord, Majesty. Diplomatic prisoners have protections, but I'm not diplomatic. I'm just a soldier." "Test me all you want, but leave her alone." Velrus's eyes gleamed. "You protect her even now, even here in front of me, knowing I could kill you both with a word." She laughed again. "Fascinating. Truly fascinating." She left the prison with her entourage, leaving new orders behind. Taeyang would be tested with Velcron medical equipment. His limits would be measured scientifically, and Princess Yuna would watch every moment to see if her courage remained. As the ships departed, Hana approached Taeyang in the courtyard. "You're in deep trouble now." "I noticed. The Queen doesn't just want to understand you anymore. She wants to own you. And what Queen Velrus wants, she takes." Taeyang looked at Yuna, who stood nearby, her face pale but determined. "Then she's going to learn that humans don't own easily." But deep down, he worried. Not for himself, but for what his resistance might cost others. For what it might cost Yuna. The game had become more dangerous, and the stakes had just risen beyond simple survival. 2 weeks passed after the Queen's first visit. They were the worst 2 weeks of Taeyang's life, and he had lived through many bad weeks. The testing began immediately. Velcran scientists arrived with equipment that looked more like torture devices than medical instruments. They measured his pain tolerance by introducing various toxins into his bloodstream. They tested his endurance by forcing him to run on machines until his body should have collapsed. They studied his healing by inflicting controlled wounds and monitoring the recovery. And true to Velrus's word, Yuna was forced to watch every session. "Subject shows remarkable cardiovascular recovery," a scientist noted during one test. "Heart rate returns to baseline 30% faster than predicted models." Taeyang hung from restraints, his arms numb and his chest burning. They had been testing his respiratory system by limiting oxygen. He had passed out twice already, but they kept reviving him. "Please," Yuna said from her chair where guards kept her secured. "He's had enough. You're killing him." "Not yet," the scientist replied without emotion. "His vitals remain stable. We can continue." But even as he said it, Taeyang's body began to shut down. His vision went dark. His breathing stopped. The machines screamed alarms. The scientists rushed forward with revival equipment. They brought him back, but it took longer this time. When Taeyang opened his eyes, he saw Yuna crying silently. That image hurt worse than any of the tests. Between testing sessions, they threw him back in his cell. He had no strength left to work, could barely walk. Other prisoners brought him food and water, A small kindness in a place without kindness. Even some alien species, who usually kept to themselves, showed concern. "The human who doesn't break is breaking," whispered through the prison. "They're killing him slowly." Hyun visited when he could. "The distress signal we sent, I think it reached someone. I'm picking up Earth military chatter on nearby frequencies. There might be ships searching." "How long?" Taeyang's voice was barely a whisper. "Weeks, maybe months. Can you last that long?" Taeyang didn't answer because he didn't know. On the 17th day, Queen Velris returned. This time, she came alone except for 2 guards. She entered Taeyang's cell without announcement, finding him lying on his bunk, too exhausted to stand. "Leave us," she commanded her guards. They hesitated but obeyed. Velris studied him in silence for a long moment. "My scientists tell me you're dying, that we've pushed too far." "Feels that way," Taeyang admitted. "Yet you still live. Lesser beings would have expired days ago." She moved closer. "I'm going to offer you something, human. A choice." "I'm listening. Fight for me. One battle against my champion. If you survive 10 minutes, I release all human prisoners from this facility. If you win, I release everyone, all species." She smiled coldly. "If you die, well, you were dying anyway." Taeyang forced himself to sit up, every movement agony. "And if I refuse? The testing continues until you're dead or broken. Your princess watches it all. Then I test her next." Anger gave him strength. "You'd test her? Why not? Perhaps human females have different resistances. Scientific inquiry demands thorough investigation." Velris's eyes gleamed. "Unless you fight, then she stays safe, protected, untouched." It was a trap, obviously, but it was also his only option. "When?" 3 days. That gives you time to recover slightly. I want you strong enough to make it interesting." She moved to the door, then paused. "Your species confuses me. You should be weak. You are weak by every physical measure. Yet you endure. I will understand this before I'm done." After she left, Taeyang lay back down, his mind racing. 3 days to prepare for a fight he couldn't win. Against a champion bred and trained to kill, with a body that was already broken. Yuna found him that evening during the mealtime. She brought extra food, stuff she had saved from her own rations. "You need to eat. Build strength." "I don't think food is going to help much." "Then don't think. Just eat." She watched him force down the nutrition paste. "What did she offer you?" He told her about the deal. Yuna's face went pale. "It's suicide. Her champion is Drask, the undefeated. He's killed over 300 opponents in gladiatorial combat." "Do I have a choice?" "Yes. You can refuse. Let them test me instead. Share the burden like you keep saying humans do." "Not happening." "Taeyang, you can't protect everyone all the time. Eventually you'll break. Everyone breaks." He met her eyes. "Then I'll break after the fight." Not before. The next 3 days were a blur of preparation. Other prisoners, hearing about the fight, offered what help they could. Hyun fashioned makeshift weight training from rocks. Hana taught him dirty fighting tricks from her military training. Even some alien prisoners shared techniques from their worlds, but everyone knew the truth. Taeyang was walking into an execution. On the morning of the fight, the prison courtyard was transformed into an arena. Prisoners were forced to attend, forming a circle around the combat area. Velcran guards placed bets on how quickly Taeyang would die. The consensus was under 5 minutes. Queen Velris sat in a special viewing throne elevated above the crowd. She looked excited, eager. This was entertainment to her. Drask, the champion, entered first. He was massive, even for a Velcran. 8 feet tall, covered in scarred scales with claws like knives and teeth like swords. He had modifications, too, cybernetic enhancements to his already formidable strength. His arrival made the ground shake. Then Taeyang entered. He looked tiny by comparison. Thin from starvation and testing, covered in healing wounds, moving like every step hurt. Some prisoners looked away, unable to watch. Yuna stood at the front of the crowd, her hands clenched so tight her knuckles were white. "The rules are simple," Velrys announced. "No weapons, no leaving the arena. Fight until one cannot continue." She smiled at Taeyang. "Begin." Drask didn't wait. He charged like a freight train, claws extended. Taeyang dove to the side at the last second, feeling the wind from the mist attack. He rolled and came up running. He couldn't match Drask's strength. His only hope was to be faster, smarter. But Drask was fast too. A claw caught Taeyang's shoulder, tearing through flesh. Blood sprayed. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. Taeyang stumbled, but didn't fall. "1 minute!" someone in the crowd shouted. Taeyang circled, trying to find an opening. Drask stalked him, confident and patient. The champion had all the advantages and knew it. He was playing with his prey. A kick to Taeyang's rib sent him flying. He hit the ground hard, felt something crack. Breathing became difficult. He tasted blood. 3 minutes. Get up. He forced himself to stand. His vision swam. His body screamed for rest. But Yuna was watching. All the humans were watching. He couldn't fall yet. Drask laughed. "Weak human, you waste my time." "Then finish it," Taeyang gasped. The champion charged again. This time Taeyang didn't dodge. He stepped into the attack, accepting a brutal blow to his chest to get close enough to strike at Drask's eyes. His fingers found soft tissue. Drask roared in pain and rage. 5 minutes. Taeyang couldn't believe he was still alive. His body was shutting down. Multiple ribs broken, internal bleeding, vision fading. But he stayed on his feet through pure willpower. Drask, enraged and half-blinded, became sloppy. He swung wild, powerful strikes that Taeyang somehow avoided. Not through skill anymore, but through desperation. His body moved on instinct, some deep survival mechanism taking over. 7 minutes. The crowd was silent now. Even the Velcron guards had stopped betting. They watched a human who should be dead, who wanted to be dead, continue fighting. Drask grabbed Taeyang in a crushing grip, lifting him off the ground. Ribs cracked further. Taeyang couldn't breathe. This was it, the end. But he didn't stop fighting. His fists hammered at Drask's wounded eyes. His knees struck at weak points. He fought like a wild animal beyond reason or strategy. 9 minutes. Drask threw him across the arena. Taeyang hit the ground and didn't move. Couldn't move. Everything hurt. Everything was broken. His eyes couldn't focus. Sounds became distant. Through the haze he heard counting. 10, 9, 8. If he stayed down, it was over. He failed. The prisoners stayed trapped. Yuna stayed in danger. 7, 6, 5. His body refused to obey. Muscles torn, bones broken. No strength left. 4, 3. He thought about every human in the prison who had watched him survive testing, who had started to believe that humans were stronger than the Velcrans thought, who had hope because he refused to break. 2. With everything he had left, Taeyang pushed himself up, first to his knees, then impossibly to his feet. He swayed, barely conscious, bleeding from a dozen wounds. But he was standing. 10 minutes, the announcer shouted. The arena exploded with sound. Prisoners cheered. Even some Velcran guards looked impressed. Drask stood across the arena, breathing hard, staring at the human who wouldn't die. Queen Velrys stood from her throne, her face unreadable. "Enough! The human has survived 10 minutes. The terms are met." Taeyang collapsed. Medics rushed forward. Yuna broke through the guards and reached him first, cradling his head. "You did it, you insane, stubborn fool, you did it!" He tried to smile, but couldn't. "Everyone, free? The humans, yes, per the deal." She looked up at the Queen. "When?" When are we released? Velrus descended from her platform, approaching them slowly. She knelt beside Tai Yang, studying his broken form with fascination. I said I would release the human prisoners, and I will. She reached out and touched his face, her claw surprisingly gentle. But not him. He stays. I claim him as personal property. Yuna's eyes went wide with horror. No, the deal was everyone. Everyone else. But he is mine now. I have never seen such resilience, such strength born from weakness. I will not let him go. Velrus stood. Prepare him for transport to the homeworld. He comes with me. You can't. Yuna tried to stand, but guards held her back. He's a person, not property. This violates every treaty. Your treaties mean nothing to me. Velrus looked at Yuna coldly. Be grateful, princess. You are free. Go home. Tell your people what you saw here. Tell them about the human who endured everything I threw at him. She smiled. And tell them he belongs to me now. As consciousness faded, Taiyang heard Yuna screaming his name, heard her promises to come back, to save him. But the darkness took him before he could respond. He had won the fight. He had survived. But the victory felt hollow, because now he belonged to the Queen, and Queen Velrus never released her prizes. Taiyang woke in luxury, soft sheets instead of rough prison blankets, clean air instead of toxic dust, light that didn't hurt his eyes. For a moment he thought he was dreaming or dead. Then the pain reminded him he was very much alive. His entire body ached from the fight with Drask. But the pain felt distant, managed. Medical nanites, he realized. Advanced Velcran medicine working to repair his broken body. He sat up slowly and looked around. The room was enormous, decorated with alien art and precious metals. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed a city of towering buildings and flying vehicles. This wasn't the prison. This was somewhere else entirely. You're awake. Good. Queen Velrus entered through a doorway that opened silently at her approach. She wore flowing robes instead of armor, but she was no less imposing. How do you feel? Like I fought a monster and lost. You survived. That is not losing. She moved to the windows, gazing out at her city. Welcome to Velcros Prime, the capital of my empire. This is the palace. These are your quarters. My quarters? I'm a prisoner. You were a prisoner. Now you are something else. She turned to face him. You are my guest, my acquisition. I have not decided the proper word yet. Taiyang forced himself to stand, though his legs shook. What do you want from me? I want to understand you, your species, how you endure what should break you. Velrus approached him, circling like a predator studying prey. I have ruled for 30 years. I have conquered 17 worlds. I have studied 100 species. But humans confuse me. We're not that complicated. You are weak individually, but strong collectively. You sacrifice yourself for others who cannot help you. You endure suffering when surrender would be easier. She stopped in front of him. This makes no logical sense, yet it works. Your species persists despite every disadvantage. Maybe strength isn't just about muscles and weapons. Explain. Taiyang chose his words carefully. Velcrans value individual power. The strongest leads. The weak are discarded. But humans value different things. Loyalty, community, hope. Those give us strength that doesn't come from our bodies. Velrus considered this. I do not understand. But I will. She gestured to the room. You have access to these quarters and the adjacent gardens. Food will be provided. Medical care continues until you are fully healed. You may request entertainment or information within reason. I can leave? The gardens only. Beyond that, guards will stop you. I am not foolish enough to let you roam freely. She moved toward the door. We will speak again soon. I have many questions. After she left, Taeyang explored his gilded cage. The quarters were 5 times larger than his entire childhood home on Earth. The bathroom had technology he didn't recognize. The closet held clothes in his size, fine materials that felt wrong on his skin. He found the gardens through a side door. They were beautiful in an alien way, with plants in colors Earth had never produced. Water features created soothing sounds. It should have been peaceful, but it was still a cage. Days passed in a strange routine. Velrus visited regularly, sometimes for hours, asking questions about human culture and psychology. She wanted to know everything: how humans raised children, how they chose leaders, what they valued, what they feared. Taeyang answered carefully, revealing truths but protecting sensitive information. He was gathering intelligence too, learning about Velcron's society and military structure. Information that might be useful if he ever escaped. "Your species has no natural weapons," Velrus said during one session. "No claws, no armor, no venom. You are prey animals that somehow became predators. How? Tools, community, persistence." Taeyang sat across from her in what had become their usual meeting spot, a garden pavilion. "Humans outlast threats. We're not the fastest or strongest, but we don't give up." Persistence. She tested the word. "Is that what drove you to protect the princess? Persistence? That was something else." "What?" "Caring about someone beyond yourself." Velrus frowned. "Weakness. Caring makes you vulnerable. Attachments are chains. Or they're what make life worth living." Taeyang met her eyes. "You have everything: power, wealth, an empire. But do you have anyone you'd take 50 lashes for?" The question clearly bothered her. She left without answering. On the 15th day, Ambassador Ji-won from the Terran Coalition arrived at the palace. Taeyang was brought to a formal receiving room where Ji-won stood surrounded by Velcron guards and officials. Ji-won was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. He looked at Taeyang with relief and guilt. "Thank God you're alive. Princess Yuna sent me. She told us everything." "Is she safe?" "Yes, back on Earth recovering. She's been pushing the government to negotiate your release." Ji-won turned to Queen Velrus. "Your Majesty, we formally request the release of Taeyang under the terms of the Neutral Space Accord." "Request denied," Velrus said simply. "He is not a prisoner. He is a voluntary guest." "Voluntary?" Taeyang said. "I didn't choose to come here." "But you haven't chosen to leave either. I have not imprisoned you. You remain because you recognize the comfortable life I offer." Velrus smiled coldly at Ji-won. "Your soldier is treated well, fed, healed, honored. This is not captivity." Ji-won's face reddened. "This is illegal detention of a coalition citizen." "Prove it. Take it to the Galactic Council. Waste your time with their endless debates and committees." Velrus waved dismissively. "By the time they reach a decision, your soldier will have lived here 10 years. The ambassador tried different arguments, legal frameworks, diplomatic pressures. Nothing worked. Velrus had made up her mind. Taeyang was her prize, and she wasn't letting go. After Ji-won left, furious and helpless, Taeyang confronted Velrus in the gardens. "Why? Why am I so important to you?" "Because I do not lose." She said it like it explained everything. "I have never encountered something I could not understand or control. You are a puzzle I must solve. I'm a person, not a puzzle. You are both." She moved closer. "I could offer you anything. Position in my military, wealth beyond measure, power. Why do you resist?" "Because none of that matters if I'm not free." "Freedom." She spat the word. "Everyone chases freedom, but what is it? The ability to make bad choices, to waste your life in meaningless pursuits?" She grabbed his chin, forcing him to meet her eyes. "I offer you purpose, a place in history. You could be the bridge between our species. Or I could be your trophy, proof that even humans can be owned. Her grip tightened. For a moment he thought she might hurt him. Then she released him and stepped back. You are infuriating. Good. At least I'm not boring. Despite himself, despite everything, Taeyang found himself almost understanding Velris. She was a queen who had everything except someone who challenged her. Everyone around her bowed and obeyed, but he refused to bend. It fascinated her, and that fascination kept him alive. Weeks became a month. Taeyang's body fully healed. He maintained his fitness in the gardens, practicing combat forms and exercises. He studied Velcran language and customs through the information terminals provided. He prepared for an escape he didn't know how to execute. Then one day, everything changed. A guard brought a new human to the gardens. His name was Doyun, a young soldier captured in a recent skirmish. He was terrified and confused. Where are we? What's happening? Taeyang explained as gently as he could. Doyun listened with growing horror. So, we're prisoners? Guests, apparently. But yes. That evening, Velris summoned them both. She sat on a smaller throne in her private chambers, regarding them coolly. Taeyang, you have been uncooperative. You refuse to share information about human military capabilities. You resist my questions about pain tolerance and psychological limits. Because I'm not a traitor. Perhaps you need motivation, she gestured to Doyun. This young human is now in my care. His treatment depends on your cooperation. Taeyang's blood ran cold. No, leave him alone. Then cooperate. Submit to my tests. Answer my questions honestly, or I will test him instead. It was the prison all over again. The same game, different pieces. Use others against him because she knew he couldn't watch innocents suffer. Over the next week, Taeyang endured new tests. Not the crude torture of the prison, but sophisticated experiments. Chemical trials, neural mapping, genetic sampling. They wanted to understand human resilience at a molecular level. He gritted his teeth and endured, because Doyun stayed safe in comfortable quarters, unharmed. But something broke inside Taeyang during those tests. Not his body or his will, but his hope. He started to believe he would never leave this place, that he would spend the rest of his life as Velris's research subject and prize. Velris noticed the change. She visited him in the medical bay after a particularly difficult session. You're losing your fire. This displeases me. What did you expect? You can't keep breaking someone and expect them to stay whole. But you've always stayed whole before. She seemed genuinely confused. What changed? Everything. Nothing. I don't know anymore. She studied him in silence. Then, unexpectedly, she said, I will allow you to send one message to Princess Yuna. Say whatever you wish. No monitoring. Why? Because you are less interesting broken. I want that fire back. She left before he could respond. Taeyang sent the message, keeping it brief. Yuna, I'm alive, still fighting. Don't give up on me. I won't give up on you. He didn't know if it would reach her, didn't know if it mattered. But 3 days later, everything changed again. Alarms rang through the palace. Guards rushed to defensive positions. Something was happening. A rescue attempt, led by Princess Yuna herself. And suddenly, Taeyang had hope again. The explosion came from the eastern palace wall. Taeyang felt the shockwave through the floor of his quarters before he heard the alarms. Guards rushed past his door, weapons ready, shouting orders in Velcron. He moved to the window and saw smoke rising from the palace perimeter. Ships engaged in aerial combat above the city. Human ships, small and fast, dodging between the larger Velcran cruisers. It was a raid, and a desperate one. Yuna, he whispered. The door to his quarters opened. Not guards this time, but Queen Velris herself. She looked furious. Your people attack my palace, during a state celebration no less. Bold, stupid, but bold. Let me go and they'll leave. No, They die here. She grabbed his arm, her claws digging in. Come, you will watch what happens to those who challenge me. She dragged him through the palace corridors to a command center overlooking the battle. General Dorax, a scarred military commander, coordinated the defense. On screens, Taeyang saw the human raid playing out. A team had breached the palace grounds. 20 soldiers, maybe, fighting through hundreds of Velcran guards. They were outgunned and outnumbered. This was a suicide mission. There, Velrus pointed to a screen showing the human team leader. Even through the helmet and armor, Taeyang recognized the way she moved. Your princess leads them. Foolish girl. She's braver than you'll ever be. Velrus's hand shot out, wrapping around his throat. Brave is one word. Dead is another. Watch how this ends. The human team fought brilliantly, using tactics and technology to overcome superior numbers, but they were being pushed back, taking casualties. 3 soldiers fell, then 5. They wouldn't make it to the palace interior. Taeyang couldn't watch this, couldn't watch Yuna die because of him. Stop the attack, I'll cooperate. I'll tell you anything you want. Just call off your forces and let them leave. No. Velrus tightened her grip on his throat. This is a lesson. For you. For them. For anyone who thinks they can take what is mine. Something snapped inside Taeyang. Not broke, but transformed. The despair that had been growing turned into rage. Cold, focused rage. He moved faster than Velrus expected, years of combat training taking over. He broke her grip and struck at vulnerable points. The same weak spots he'd learned from fighting Drask. She staggered back, more surprised than hurt. Guards rushed forward, but Taeyang was already moving. He grabbed a dropped weapon, something like an energy pistol. He didn't hesitate. He fired. The bolt took down 2 guards. The others dove for cover. Taeyang ran, knowing the palace layout from weeks of observation and questions. He'd been gathering intelligence without realizing it, filing away every detail. Behind him, Velrus screamed orders. Lock down the palace! Bring him back alive! Taeyang sprinted through corridors, his heart hammering. He needed to reach Doyun first, then find a way to the human team. The palace was a maze, but he remembered. Left at the fountain, right at the weapons display, down the stairs to the lower levels. He found Doyun's quarters and burst through the door. The young soldier jumped up, startled. What's happening? Rescue. We're leaving. Taeyang tossed him a weapon he'd taken from a fallen guard. Can you shoot? Yes, but then follow me. They moved together through the palace. Guards appeared, and Taeyang fought with desperation he'd never felt before. Not for survival anymore, but for escape, for freedom, for the chance to see Yuna again. They reached a maintenance corridor that led toward the palace grounds. Above them, the battle continued. Taeyang could hear weapons fire getting closer. The human team was fighting toward the palace interior. Captain Nari, do you copy? A voice crackled through a radio frequency Taeyang picked up on a fallen guard's equipment. We're pinned down. Need extraction now. Taeyang grabbed the radio. This is Taeyang. I'm in the south maintenance corridor with another human prisoner, moving to your position. Static, then a woman's voice. Taeyang? Thank God. Princess Yuna said you'd be in the residential wing. Change of plans. What's your situation? Bad. Lost 7 soldiers, running low on ammunition. We can't reach you. Then I'll reach you. Where are you? East Courtyard. But there are at least 50 Velcran guards between us and any exit. I'm coming. Hold your position. Taeyang, you can't... He switched off the radio and turned to Doyun. You good with that weapon? The young soldier nodded, scared but determined. I'm with you. They fought their way toward the east courtyard. It was brutal. Taeyang took hits, felt plasma bolts graze his skin. Doyun took a shot to the shoulder but kept moving. They were outnumbered 20-1, but they had desperation on their side. Finally, they broke through to the courtyard. The human team was barricaded behind rubble, pinned down by crossfire. Taiyang recognized the armor markings. Coalition Special Forces, the best humanity had. And in the center, commanding the defense, was Yuna. She wasn't wearing a helmet. Her face was covered in dirt and blood, and she looked more beautiful than Taiyang had ever seen her. When she saw him, her eyes went wide. "Taiyang! Miss me?" A plasma bolt exploded near them. Yuna grabbed his arm and pulled him behind cover. "You absolute idiot! You could have been killed running here." "Couldn't let you have all the fun." Captain Nari, a tough-looking woman with cybernetic enhancements, assessed Taiyang and Doyun quickly. "You're the one the princess came for. You better be worth it. We've lost good people getting this far." "I know. I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't bring them back. Can you fight?" "Yes." "Then grab a weapon. We're going to shoot our way out of here." The plan was desperate. A fighting retreat to the extraction point where their ship waited. The Velcran forces would chase them the whole way. Casualties were certain. Success was unlikely. But they were human. Unlikely was what they did best. The breakout began with coordinated fire. The human team moved as one unit, covering each other, never leaving anyone behind. Taiyang fought beside Yuna, protecting her flank like he had in the prison. It felt right. Natural. "I told you I'd come back," she said between shots. "You kept your promise." "Always." They reached the extraction point, a landing pad where their ship waited. But General Dorax had anticipated this. Velcron elite guards surrounded the area, heavy weapons, armor. This was the final gauntlet. "We'll never make it through," Captain Nari said grimly. "Yes, we will." Taiyang checked his weapon charge. "We've come too far to fail now." Before they could move, Queen Velris appeared. Not with guards this time, but alone. She walked across the landing pad slowly, her robes flowing in the wind from the burning city around them. "Enough," she commanded. All weapons lowered, both Velcran and human. Her voice carried absolute authority. "This ends now." She approached Taiyang directly, ignoring the human soldiers who aimed at her. "You would throw away everything I offered? The comfort, the safety, the purpose?" "Yes. Because it wasn't mine to choose. I could kill everyone here. End this farce." Her hand rested on a weapon at her belt. "Give me one reason not to." Taiyang stepped forward away from the protective cover of his team. "Because you wanted to understand humans. Here's your lesson. We choose our own paths. We protect those we care about, and we never stop fighting for freedom." He stood directly in front of her, unarmed and vulnerable. "You can't own what you don't understand." Velris stared at him, her golden eyes unreadable. Around them, the palace burned. Her guards waited for orders. The human team prepared to fight and die. Then she did something unexpected. She laughed. Not the cold laugh Taiyang had heard before, but something almost genuine. "You are remarkable, infuriating, incomprehensible, but remarkable. So let us go." "No." Her smile faded. "You are mine. You will always be mine." She drew her weapon, a curved blade that gleamed in the firelight. "If I cannot have you alive, then I will have you as a memory." She struck, fast as lightning. Taiyang barely blocked with his stolen weapon. The impact jarred his arms. She was stronger, faster, and trained since birth for combat. He was exhausted, injured, and running on adrenaline. "Taiyang!" Yuna screamed. "Stay back!" he shouted. This fight was his, had to be his. He and Velris dueled across the landing pad. Her strikes were precise and deadly. His were desperate and defensive. She drove him back, step by step, cut after cut. Blood ran down his arms. "You cannot win," she said. "Don't have to win, just have to last long enough." "For what?" "For her to escape." He glanced at Yuna. "Get to the ship. Go." Not without you! Go. He blocked another strike, felt his weapon crack under the impact. That's an order, Princess. Yuna looked torn. Captain Nari grabbed her arm. We have to move, now! As the human team retreated to their ship, Taeyang fought with everything left. He knew he couldn't defeat Velrus, but he could buy time, could make sure Yuna escaped. That was enough. Velrus seemed to realize his strategy. Noble, stupid, so very human. She disarmed him with an expert twist, sending his weapon flying. Her blade pressed against his throat. Last chance. Stay willingly. Be my consort, my general. I will spare your people. Call off my invasion plans. Give you power beyond imagination. And all I have to do is give up being me. Is that so high a price? Yes. He met her eyes without fear. Because I'd rather die free than live as your pet. She raised her blade. Taeyang closed his eyes, thinking of Yuna, hoping she made it out. The blade fell, but not on him. General Dorax's spear struck Velrus from behind, driving through her shoulder. She roared in pain and fury, spinning to face the traitor. You are unfit, Dorax declared. This obsession has made you weak. The Empire requires strong leadership. A coup. Here. Now. Chaos erupted. Velcran guards split, some supporting their queen, others joining Dorax. The battle became civil war in seconds. Captain Nari's voice came through Taeyang's stolen radio. We're at the ship. Get out of there. Taeyang ran. Plasma bolts flew around him. The palace was tearing itself apart. He reached the human ship just as it started lifting off. Hands reached down and pulled him aboard. He collapsed on the deck, gasping. Yuna knelt beside him, checking his wounds. You're alive. Thank God you're alive. Did everyone make it? 13 out of 20. Good odds for an impossible mission. She pressed her forehead against his. You scared me. Again. Sorry, it's kind of my thing. The ship accelerated, dodging fire from both Velcran factions now fighting each other. They punched through the atmosphere and jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind them, Velcros Prime descended into chaos. Taeyang finally let himself relax. He was free, actually free. Is it over? Yuna held his hand tightly. Not yet. The war is just beginning. But we're together now. That's what matters. He wanted to believe her, but as consciousness faded from exhaustion and injury, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. That Queen Velrus, wounded and deposed but still alive, would not forget, would not forgive, would never stop searching for the human who made her feel weak. The Coalition medical bay on the warship horizon was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors. Taeyang lay in a healing pod, nanites working to repair damage from his duel with Velrus. Through the transparent cover, he watched Yuna sit beside him, reading reports on a datapad. She hadn't left his side in 3 days. When the pod opened with a soft hiss, she immediately set down her work. How do you feel? Like I got in a fight with a queen and barely survived. He sat up slowly, testing his body. The wounds had closed. The pain was manageable, but some scars went deeper than flesh. How long was I out? 72 hours. The doctors wanted to keep you under longer, but you healed faster than expected. She smiled slightly. They're starting to understand why Velrus found you so interesting. I'd rather be boring and anonymous. Too late for that. She helped him stand, supporting his weight until his legs remembered how to work. You're a hero, Taeyang, the man who survived Velcron imprisonment and escaped the queen herself. Every news broadcast is covering your story. Great, just what I wanted. They walked slowly through the medical bay. Other injured soldiers from the rescue mission occupied nearby beds. Some nodded to Taeyang as he passed. Others saluted. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a survivor who got lucky. Captain Nari found them in the hallway. She looked tired but pleased. Good to see you up. We need to debrief you about the intelligence you gathered. Is it that urgent? Very. The Velcran Empire is in chaos. Velrus was wounded in the coup and has gone into hiding. General Dorax claimed the throne, but half the military refused to recognize him. They're fighting among themselves. Nari led them to a conference room. This is our chance to push back while they're divided. The debriefing took hours. Taeyang told them everything he'd learned about Velcron military structure, technology, and strategy, information he'd pieced together from conversations with Velrus and observations in the palace. It was more valuable than anyone expected. This changes everything, a coalition admiral said, studying the data. Their fleet distribution, their supply lines, their command structure. With this information, we can plan a proper defense. Or an offense, another officer suggested. No. Taeyang spoke up. They're already fighting themselves. We don't need to invade. We just need to hold our borders and let them collapse. Yuna nodded in agreement. He's right. The Velcran expansion was driven by Velrus's ambition. With her gone and the Empire fractured, they'll turn inward. We should focus on helping the freed human prisoners reintegrate and strengthening our defenses. The meeting continued, but Taeyang's attention drifted. Through the window, he could see Earth in the distance, blue and beautiful. Home. He had thought he'd never see it again. After the debriefing, Yuna took him to the observation deck. They stood together in silence, watching their home planet slowly rotate. I kept my promise, she said quietly. I came back for you. You risked everything, lost soldiers, started a diplomatic incident. You endured everything for me first, taking those hits in the prison, fighting Drask, surviving Velrus's obsession. She turned to face him. You showed me what real strength looks like, not power or force, but the will to keep going, to protect others even when it costs everything. I was just trying to survive. No, you were trying to live. There's a difference. She reached for his hand. What will you do now? The military wants to recruit you as an advisor. The media wants interviews. The government wants you for propaganda. What do you want? She smiled. I want you to choose for yourself. For the first time in months, you get to decide your own path. It was a strange feeling. Freedom. Real freedom, not the gilded cage Velrus offered. The weight of it was almost overwhelming. I need time, he said, to process everything, to figure out who I am without someone trying to break me or own me. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. Weeks passed. Taeyang stayed on the horizon while it maintained patrol near Earth. He met with the rescued prisoners, helping them adapt to freedom. Many struggled with nightmares and trauma. He understood that better than anyone. Doyun, the young soldier he'd protected, visited him often. I've been thinking about what you said in the palace, about choosing your own path. I'm going to finish my military service, then go home, be with my family. Life's too short to waste on things that don't matter. Sounds like a good plan? What about you? What's your plan? Taeyang wasn't sure yet. Part of him wanted to disappear. Find a quiet place and forget everything. But another part knew he couldn't. Too many people were counting on him. Too many had died to bring him home. Yuna found him in the observation deck again, staring at Earth. She'd changed from her military uniform into civilian clothes. I have news. The coalition is forming a new diplomatic corps, specifically for interacting with the Velcran factions. They want people who understand both cultures. They want you. They want us. Both of us. She stood beside him. You know the Velcrans better than any human alive, and I know how to negotiate. Together we could help prevent another war. Or we could make things worse. Possibly, but I'd rather try and fail than not try at all. She paused. I'm not asking you to decide now. I'm asking you to consider it. Before he could respond, Alarms blared throughout the ship. Captain Nari's voice came over the speakers. All personnel to stations. Unidentified ship approaching. Velcran signature. They rushed to the bridge. On the main screen, a small Velcran ship appeared, damaged and barely functional. It broadcast a message on all frequencies. Coalition vessel, I request permission to dock. I am alone and unarmed. The voice was familiar. Taiyang's blood ran cold. That's Velris! The bridge erupted in debate. Some wanted to destroy the ship, others wanted to capture her. Captain Nari looked at Taiyang. Your call. She came for you. Let her dock, under heavy guard. I'll meet her. Yuna grabbed his arm. This could be a trap. If she wanted us dead, she'd bring an army. One small ship means she wants to talk. He met her eyes. I need to face her. End this properly. The docking bay was surrounded by armed soldiers when Velris's ship landed. The door opened slowly, and she emerged alone. She wore simple clothes instead of royal robes. Her shoulder was bandaged where Dorax's spear had struck. She looked diminished somehow, smaller, but her eyes still held that same fierce intelligence. Hello, Taeyang. Velris. He stood 10 meters away, soldiers positioned between them. Why are you here? To give you something. She held up a small device. Data chip. Contains everything. Military codes, fleet positions, political alliances, everything you need to understand the current state of my former empire. Why would you give us that? Because I lost. Not just the throne, but something more important. She looked at him with an expression he'd never seen before. Something almost human. You were right. I wanted to own what I couldn't understand. And in trying to possess you, I lost everything else. I don't believe you. I don't expect you to. She tossed the data chip. A soldier caught it. But the information is real. Use it. Protect your people. That's what you do best. She turned to leave, but Taiyang called out, Wait. What will you do now? Survive. Adapt. Endure. She smiled slightly. I learned from the best. She paused at her ship's door. You made me feel something I never felt before. Weakness, vulnerability, loss. Her voice softened. Thank you for that. It made me more complete. You're still dangerous. Always, but no longer to you. She entered her ship. I will never stop searching for you, Taiyang, but not to capture, to understand. You showed me that strength comes in forms I never imagined. I need to learn what that means. Her ship launched and disappeared into space. The bridge crew analyzed the data chip. It was genuine, a complete intelligence package that would give the coalition a massive advantage. She actually did it, Yuna said in disbelief. She gave us everything. She's playing a longer game, Taeyang said. Velris doesn't give up. She adapts, changes strategy. Then we'll adapt too, together. In the following months, Taiyang and Yuna worked with the new diplomatic corps. They helped negotiate peace with the Velcran factions that wanted to end the hostilities. They advised military strategy for defense against those who didn't. And slowly, carefully, they built something new. The war didn't end immediately. Wars never did. But it changed, became less about conquest and more about boundaries. Less about domination and more about coexistence. Taiyang never forgot his time in the prison. The pain, the tests, the feeling of being owned. But he also didn't let it define him. He used it. Let it make him stronger, wiser, more empathetic to those who suffered. He became a symbol of human resilience, but more importantly, he became himself again. Not a prisoner, not a prize, just Taiyang, a man who had endured everything and refused to break. 1 year after his rescue, he and Yuna stood on Earth, at a memorial for the soldiers who died in the palace raid. Names carved in stone, heroes who gave everything. They died for me, Taeyang said quietly. They died for what you represented. Hope. Proof that humans don't give up. Yuna took his hand. You honor them by living, by fighting for the peace they wanted. Is that enough? It's everything. Somewhere in deep space, Queen Velrys watched the memorial broadcast from her hidden ship. She had lost her empire but gained something stranger. Understanding, growth, change. Things she never thought possible for her species. She sent one final message, knowing it would be intercepted, knowing Taeyang would hear it. You were the only one who ever made me feel weak. But weakness, I have learned, is not the opposite of strength. It is part of it. You taught me that. I will never stop searching for you, human. Not to capture you, but to understand you. And perhaps, in understanding you, to understand myself. Until we meet again. Taeyang deleted the message without responding. But he didn't forget it. The future was uncertain. The peace was fragile. But for the first time in a long time, Taeyang felt something he'd almost lost. Hope. Real, genuine hope for what could be. He had endured every hit for the princess. And now, together with her and the friends he'd made, the allies he'd found, and the people who believed in him, he would endure whatever came next. Because that's what humans did. They endured. They adapted. They survived. And sometimes, against all odds, they thrived. The story was far from over, but this chapter had ended, and the next one would be written on his terms, in his way, with people he chose to stand beside. That was enough. That was everything.